Good morning, Bitcoins, and welcome to the World Crypto Network Live. We're checking in with Chris Odom of Open Transactions and Stash Crypto. Last time we checked in with Chris was over 2 years ago on, it was March the 12th of 2014. Check that out. As always, you can support this show by donating to the Bitcoin address on your screen. Go ahead and pause the video now. I'll wait. You can donate. And that's about it. Welcome to World Crypto Network Live. I'm Thomas Hunt. Hey, Chris, how's it going?
Good. How about yourself?
It's been going good. It's raining in San Francisco. No one has any idea what to do with it with these crazy hills. No one can walk. You can't ride a scooter. It's no good. You can't go anywhere. We're staying inside till it's over.
That's too bad. Normally you get the best weather there in October and November time of year.
It was sunny just last week or the other day. I was at a concert. It was sunny. It was too hot. I needed sunblock. Today, rainy, cold. I need a jacket. It just changes on a dime. But we're just as we're saying in the introduction, you're back now with a new product. A few years ago, we talked about open transactions. It was a kind of an alternative to Bitcoin. Your new product is called the Stash Node Pro. And what can you tell us about the Stash Node Pro and how does it use open transactions?
Well, first of all, I don't know if I would characterize open transactions as an alternative to Bitcoin. Open transaction off-chain system. It's a financial crypto system, so it's cryptographically secure, and it's off-chain. It doesn't have its own chain. It doesn't have its own coin. But it does have cryptographically secure instruments. It has a full range of different financial instruments like checks and cash and markets and on smart contracts, recurring payments, invoices, and so on. And so it's useful to issue currencies on OT and use the instruments there. It's also useful to integrate blockchain. For example, if you wanted to deposit Bitcoins into open transaction, transact them off-chain, and then withdraw them again back out to the Bitcoin blockchain, you could use it for that. You could use it with basically any blockchain, and eventually we're going to be using it with colored coins as well.
So right now the device contains a Bitcoin full node. So it has a terabyte hard drive and a full copy of the blockchain. How does that improve the ability to do open transactions? Is that a requirement?
Well, the device does contain a Bitcoin full node. And one thing that's useful about that is I device that does. I don't think there are any other devices that contain a Bitcoin full node, although there may be some that contain a Bitcoin wallet. And it can be gained from that. There's also useful functionality that can be gained from that we intend to exploit in the future. For example, colored coins require a full node. And so you couldn't use colored coins normally from a mobile client without using some other full node else. And we believe that the best person to run that is yourself.
So you would be able to use a mobile wallet on your phone that would then interact with the box that you have in your home.
That's right. You know, if you run a stash node at home, when you're walking around about your daily life, you can use the mobile app and have access to the stash node. So in effect, it's like you have the functionality of a Bitcoin full node through a mobile phone. Of course, the stash wallet mobile app would work even if you didn't have a node, but it's just extra functionality that you get.
Now, it says in the press release that open transactions will allow you to do micropayments. How does the Stash Node Pro allow that?
Well, the Stash includes a full integration of open transactions with the Bitcoin full node. And so everything that you can open transactions, you can do using the Stash Node Pro. So you can use it for off-chain transactions inside the node and micropayments because on-chain transactions are too expensive.
So how would this compare with a project like the Lightning Network? Because the Lightning Network does micropayments as a layer on top of Bitcoin. Is open transactions similar to that?
I suppose. I mean, I wouldn't really compare it to the Lightning, but yeah, I suppose you could compare the two in that sense that I suppose they're both able to do microtransactions. But I've actually used the Lightning Network. I don't know if there's an implementation in the wild yet, so I guess it's kind of theoretical.
All right, and how would this box compare with the 21 project. 21 released a box with a miner. It was supposed to be a Bitcoin toolkit. Is this similar to that box?
Well, I can see where people might ask the question. I think the guys that are brilliant guys. I'm a big fan of Balaji, and of course they've got Michael Goldstein over there, who's a smart guy. But I don't think it's really the same type of product. I'm not super familiar with their stuff, but as far as I know, their device does not include a Bitcoin full. And so it's kind of a different product. Another differentiator I would say would be that I believe that their off-chain transactions occur on their box. In our case, whatever off-chain transactions are still happening on your Stashnode Pro box. I believe with the 21 computer, the off-chain stuff happens at the company in some central processing, and then you can have it deposit back to your wallet on your 21 box.
It does seem like they have a proprietary system that handles the micropayments.
Yeah, and that could be a problem from a regulatory perspective, because I know FinCEN, for example, doesn't have any lower bounds. Another big difference between the 21 box and our box would be that their box does not have open transactions. And another difference that pops to my mind is that their box is an app platform. So it's a place where developers can play around with apps. Those eventually they would have like an app store type of thing. With our box, you absolutely would not want any other software running on it. You wouldn't want to just download apps or run other apps on our box. Where your money is stored, it's sort of should be seen as an appliance. And not that we wouldn't be able to sell other products where people could have and use the 21 product as an app platform, but I wouldn't do that on our node.
So you'd say the 21 box is probably more geared towards developers, whereas this is more geared towards offering a preset selection of financial applications like the micropayments, the checks, I don't know, these other kinds of open transactions products, right?
Yes, that's true. Now the Stashnode Pro is not the that I would normally have launched. You know, if I was doing everything a certain way, you know, the way that I have it in my mind, it probably wouldn't have been the first product. This is the first product that we're able to do now. We know we have the ability to do this product now, and it is a part of our strategy. And so I'm content to sort of let it grow and do its thing on the side, maybe kind of like how Apple viewed the Apple TV product.
So can you run open transactions without the Stashnode Pro box? Like, could I just download it, run it on my Mac or something?
Yes, I mean we have a open source open transactions desktop on Mac, and of course the Stash wallet has open transactions fully integrated into the Stash wallet, and you can use that node or not. It's not like a fax machine. With a fax machine, you know, I have to and you have to have one, and then if we both have one, then I can send you a fax, and then the value of the network grows from there. Pro, it could be more like one of us has one. You know, if I write you a check, wallet is going to connect to whatever node that the check was drawn on in order to deposit that check. And so perhaps even neither of us have. You know, maybe we're just using the wallet for Bitcoin transactions because there's the BIP47 factor, which is a big one. Or we may be, you know, dealing with financial instruments from some other node.
And what's BIP47?
BIP47 is a Bitcoin improvement proposal that was implemented in Samurai Wallet, and that we're also have implemented in our and it solves a lot of problems for Bitcoin addresses. You know, a Bitcoin address is not really analogous to an email address. An email address, you can put it on, you can give someone the business card, and they can send you an email to that email address, and you can give the same address to everybody. And it's sort of like a public address that you can use where someone can email you. But with Bitcoin, if you give Bitcoin address to everybody, I mean, first of all, there's no privacy there. And second, if there would be no way to differentiate one payment from another. You wouldn't be able to tell who paid you what. For merchants, it's completely untenable. And for a merchant, he has to generate Bitcoin address for each purchase. And that's the only way that he's even able to differentiate the purchases from each other and know which customer paid what. And this protocol now in Bitcoin that you see a lot, where you can't just send someone some money. You have to ask him to create a receiving address, and then he has to create one and send it to you. And then he has to sit there watching that address from here to eternity and crediting you for any deposits that come in. And if, God forbid, if you send the wrong amount, and it has no way to send you a refund because a Bitcoin address is not a return address. So there's no return address in Bitcoin. And Bit47 solves all this. First of all, Bit47 address, I think of it like a payment address that's and more analogous to an email address, and you can put it on your business card and give the same address to everybody and to you. And the first benefit is that you get a return address on the payment, so you can immediately see, oh, you know, Chris paid me, or John paid me, or whoever else paid me, and send something back to them if you wanted to. It seems basic, but it's very important functionality that it's time for the Bitcoin world to start to embrace. And so you have that benefit. And then you also have the benefit that all the transactions that occur are private between the two parties, because there's a Diffie-Hellman process that goes on here where they're able to both generate a shared secret. So a blockchain observer can see transfers happening on the block. You can't really link them back to the parties that are doing the transfers. Now, the two parties involved can, you know, they can look at Cash Wallet and they can see the historical transactions they've made between each other, but no one else observing the blockchain can see that. And so it solves all the problems that the blockchain currently has. And it also solves fungibility problems that causes for the. And so we expect that this will be pretty disruptive to chain analysis companies and that sort of ilk.
Well, that sounds good. That would be good. There's also a couple of other projects I'd like to mention while we were talking about full nodes. There is a company called Bitseed at bitseed.org, and they do produce a full node. It's a few $100s, has a hard drive in there, and allows you to update the transactions on the network. And also my friend Chris Ellis has been producing full nodes as part of his Not Just Made in China project, which is at startjoin.com/protip. So there are other full node options out there, but the specific addition that you're adding is the open transactions network and the ability to do transactions on there. That's correct, right, Chris?
That's certainly one of them, yes. You know, you have the open transactions integration. Open transactions allows you to do invoicing, payments, smart contracts, bid-ask markets. And of course, we also have other features like the Bit47 integration and so on.
We're also joined by Chris Ellis from the World Crypto Network, who's worked on the ProTip project and the full nodes. And Chris, do you have any questions for Chris? I know this is confusing, but
yeah. Hi, Chris. Yeah, no, so good to meet you. I only just sort of learned about it this evening, and forgive me if I've been a little bit kind of ranty on Twitter. I'm just going to try to digest it all, because at first I couldn't figure out what it was. So now that you've answered those questions, it makes a lot more sense to me. So as I understand it, then essentially this is a little server that will run in your house, and I understand you've also got an app as well that runs on the mobile phone. Is that right? It's like open source.
Yes. Yes. Well, there's an Android app that we'll be releasing when we release the node in a couple weeks. There's also an upcoming. There's an open source desktop app, so it's not a corporate product, but it's an open source open transactions client that's available for desktop.
Great. And so I can see how that might be useful to somebody, perhaps high net worth individual who's got a lot of Bitcoins, who wants to be able to securely transfer the Bitcoins from this server-like device from their mobile. Plus, I noticed it was on a particular new distro of Linux called Hardened. Is that right? And you basically tried to spruce up the security that way. And you've also got some peer-to-peer messaging. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes. Well, of course, we have a couple different messaging avenues. One of them is open transactions. So open transactions has identity based on Bit47 and has identity credentials. And the identity credentials are posted in our DHT. And so if you get someone's ID, someone's bit47 ID, load their identity credentials, and from there, the client is able to coordinate communications across different nodes if you wanted to use open transactions. Separately from that, we've also been integrating BitMessage. And so, you know, I don't know if I'm supposed to say this, but we do have BitMessage also running on the node.
Well, that's really great. That's great. I love BitMessage, guys. They're really cool. I was actually surprised that they weren't getting more adoption. So I'm glad that you're.
Well, I mean, I think that's because most people don't get it yet. Because there's certain things where, you know, it's kind of like the wheel, right? If you don't see everybody using it, everybody doesn't get it yet. And I had a very like that probably about 20 years ago. 20 years ago, I don't know how old it was, but you know, I was living in the 90s, and everyone around me was using the operating system Windows 3.1.1.
Yeah,
remember that?
Yeah.
It's the one before Windows, right? And everyone in the whole world was using it. And I remember I had bought a Pentium computer, and I had purchased the Next Step operating system. And I was running Next Step computer. And of course, Next Step, we all know, is the modern day Mac OS X. It was the one that had been produced by Next Computer back in the 90s. And I remember Next Step, which basically looks like modern day Mac, and it's in the early to mid 90s. Everyone all around me is using Windows 3.1. I just had this distinct feeling come over me, like, either I'm wrong, or the whole rest of the world is wrong. And I sort of had to accept that that's possible sometimes. It's a rare thing, but you see that.
So I had a question, because I did read the press release, and it mentioned proprietary solutions or proprietary software. And also I wanted to ask about the price tag as well, because it weighs in at something like $987. At first I thought there was an error with the decimal point. I didn't know if that meant $98.70 or what, but can you explain to us the sort of the reasoning behind the price point that you've gone for?
Well, first of all, it may seem expensive compared to, say, a $400 21 box, but this is, like I said before, this is not the first product that I would normally have launched. It wouldn't have been the arsenal, but given that it was the one that we're able to launch, more like the first personal computer or the first Apple One, that when it first comes out, it's sort of a thing that hobbyists are playing around with. And, 10 or 20 years later, it'll be something that everyone's kid has in their pocket. I don't think it's necessarily going to be like that 20 years from now. But I think for the first rush of these kinds of devices, especially for a new company like us, that's the appropriate price point of the people we're looking at.
Because I think some people have sort of voiced on Reddit and Twitter that by that time you may as well buy your own laptop and put a lot of this software on yourself. So what's the proprietary stuff that you mentioned in the press release? What's the value add that you've given the device?
Now, I should be clear, there's too much proprietary software on this device. Most of it is open source. With scripts that we'll make available for inspection, that's sort of publicly available for inspection. How we're going to license them yet, whether it'll be a proprietary license or not. I think the proprietary stuff, which you probably saw in the press release, probably gets back more towards our enterprise edition, which we just.
Oh, okay. So could we perhaps look forward then to like a lower cost version of this for the consumer end of the market?
We are looking also at doing a version. It's not our first product out. Maybe in another 3 or 6 months or something like that. That would be much cheaper, based on something like that. It would not contain a Bitcoin full node, but it would be a very similar device.
Great. Well, thanks very much for answering my questions.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you.
Cheers.
All right, great. Thanks, Chris, for the questions. And now, of course, if there's anyone out there in the comments are a little bit delayed, so I'm going to stall a little bit. But if you have any questions in the comments, we'd be glad to answer those. Give them a shot. Just to look at the other stuff that's been going on with this, there was an article today on Bitcoin.com by our friend Jamie Redmond. It was good to see. It said Stash launches Bank in a Box Bitcoin full node. Again, like Chris was saying, this could be useful to high network individuals who want to own a lot of Bitcoins and then control them with the Android app, which would connect directly to your box. So it's kind of like owning your own copy of like the Coinbase website that you run locally that would manage your funds for you. Is it something like that, Chris?
Value of such a device increases depending on how much money you plan to keep on it. Obviously, if you're going to keep $20 or $50 on the box, you don't want to spend $1,000 for it. But the danger right now with Bitcoin on their phone. You know, I had a friend who had $30,000 worth of Bitcoin stolen. I had another friend who had $180 worth of Bitcoin stolen off his desktop computer. And so, and that need to be solved. And you know, I think the box, it's to be purchased by teenagers in the first couple weeks, but you know, it'll be hobbyists, I think, in the first time period. But after that, it'll slowly trickle its way down.
So it'd be the kind of thing it's comparable with the Zappo.com website where people with, I don't know, hundreds of Bitcoins would want to store them on the box so that they could control them on their own, send them around, perhaps without other seeing eyes. I mean, it would be on the Bitcoin network, maybe it would be through open transactions, but as opposed to if you send it through Coinbase or if you send it through an exchange, you might move the market just while you're, you know, managing your own accounts or sending around your own funds, that kind of thing.
Well, plus, you know, the Bitcoin technology was invented so that third parties manage your funds and send your funds. The whole purpose of Bitcoin was so that it could transact directly with one another without having to use a trusted third party. And you know, the stuff that people use trusted third parties for today, all those services can all be replaced by consumer devices. You know, one example, transactions. You know, in the past, we had this conception of the open transaction server being operated by a company, such as an exchange, you know, a company that has users, 50,000. And then I asked myself, well, what is the functionality here? Like, you know, of course, there's things like bid-ask markets and smart contracts, but simple, like say a check. You know, if I write you a check, what would your open transactions client normally do? Whatever server the check is drawn on, which would be, say, my third-party service that I was using. And it connects there and deposits the check. You know, it would say, hey, do I have an account there? No. Create one, deposit the check. Do I trust this service? Probably not. To my personal wallet. And then I asked myself, well, what would happen if instead of using a third-party service, I just ran my own little StashNode Pro? You know, if I wrote you a check that was drawn on that server, would still do the same process. It would say, well, you know, do I have an account on this server? No. Create one. Deposit the check. Do I trust this server? No. Withdraw the Bitcoin. Right? But the difference here is that you don't have a trusted third party. And all the regulations that are out there regulate third parties. FinCEN regulations, read all the FinCEN regulations. None of them say that they're regulating private transactions. They all say that they're regulating who provide money services as a business, as a third party, right? And I realized, hey, you know, people can just run this software themselves, the exact same functionality that they get from these trusted third parties, except there is no trusted third relation, poof, ceases to exist. They all become private transactions.
I agree. I think it's good stuff. And I also think what you've helped explain here is that a lot of Reddit and a lot of what the reaction's been is, sure, you could buy your own box, or sure, you could run the open source transaction software on your own, but the value that you're bringing is bringing it all together as one set, designing it for hobbyists, for programmers, similar to the 21 box, where if you want to get an introduction to Bitcoin, you get the 21 box, you start programming, you have a little miner, you have a little option, you know, it's like a little play set, like a chemistry set we used to have. And this would be like a chemistry set for open transactions.
Yeah, I suppose you could look at it that way. You know, I do look at it as sort of a hobbyist thing, but this device is a very central part of our long-term strategy. You got to think of it kind of like a Tesla car. You know, it's always getting those updates. There's going to be a lot of new powerful functionality coming out available through these devices that we don't see at first.
All right.
But there is value, I think, in this sense that it's a turnkey solution. There are a lot of people on Reddit that I've seen over the past that, how do I just run one of these things? I just want to pop one up. I'm having some trouble compiling this or that. Is there a turnkey solution out there? Yes, there is.
All right, that's great stuff. And just to cover what they're saying in the comments, we will be having the Bitcoin group tomorrow. We missed last week. We just couldn't get it together on scheduling and the writing. But I have found links already for tomorrow. We're definitely going to be talking about Zcash. We're going to bring up the Stash Node Pro. We're going to see what Tone thinks of that, see what Tone thinks of Zcash. Expect some fireworks as per usual. Zcash, as everyone knows, is a big ICO type project going off between today and tomorrow. So we'll have that for you tomorrow, Friday at 3 p.m. People are also talking about hardware wallets, Treasure, Ledger, KeepKey. All of these are good solutions. The Stash is kind of like a hardware wallet mixed together with a 21 box. Maybe it's not for you, but it's for developers, hardware people that want to try out open transactions. And as Chris said, they're going to produce cheaper and cheaper boxes. You could also, if you're just a programmer and you're like, hey, I'm into this, I want to know, download it yourself, run the open source, open transactions client, and try it out. Do what you want to do. And thanks, Chris Ellis, for joining us all the way from England. And thank you, Chris, for being here from Austin, Texas. And until tomorrow around 3.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.